Hello! We are making pajama pants. In the last video we pinned the crotch seam together, pinning this seam together, one on either side, matching up our notches, and all along here. So we will be sewing this seam in this video. There's a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance for this pattern. Almost all commercial clothing patterns that you would buy in a fabric store have a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So you'll find that on your machine. It's marked, here I'll show you. It's marked on most. Mine is right there. You can put a piece of tape there to remind you if you would like. It's helpful for many people. My youngest child loves tape, and we never have it because she uses it all the time, so I'm not putting a piece of tape there for that reason. So I'm going to line up my pattern. My fabric, the bulk of it is going to be on this side. When I start, my fabric is in my lap because of the direction that the machine goes when it sews. I know some of you had a little bit of trouble with that on the inseam when we were sewing. So if your fabric's all over here, when you're trying to start sewing, that's not going to work. It needs to be back over here. So I'll line this up. I'm going to look at the edge and where the edge of my fabric is, and that is at the 5/8 of an inch. Put my presser foot down. I've got my machine well threaded and the bobbins up behind. Oops. I'm going to put my needle down. And then I'm going to sew doing a back stitch, both at the beginning and at the end. And I'm just going to go on a slow setting, if my machine has a setting, to do that curve. And that's how that's going to work. Take a few stitches, back stitch, and then I will keep going. So this is the straight part, so I'm going to go just a little bit faster. Go any speed that makes you comfortable. Slower is usually better. As I come up to the pins, I'll take them out. That little notch will go over the 5/8 inch seam allowance, and that's fine because you want a nice straight seam. That was just for matching. Okay, I'm getting into the curve. I'm going to slow down a little bit, and I'm just looking at where my fabric matches up with that 5/8 of an inch line. So I'm actually looking here about a 1/2 to 1/4 inch away from where my needle actually is. I'm looking at where that mark is on my machine, and it will get to the right place when it's at the needle. If it's at the right place when it passes that mark. I'm going to make sure the underside is smooth here as I'm coming up to that seam for that I've already sewn the inseam. And I want to make sure that seam allowance is smooth and my fabric is smooth underneath there, so I'm not going to sew in any wrinkles. I don't want to do that. Sometimes people do that on purpose, but that's making tucks or gathers. And that's not what we want here. So this is probably the trickiest part. I'm just going to go nice and slow. As I'm turning it, I'm still looking at, oh, my screen went dark. I'm still looking at where the edge of my fabric is compared to that 5/8 of an inch line. Almost done. Now I'm on the straightaway again. Go a little bit faster. But again, you don't have to go faster. You don't want to. Make sure you're not pulling too much at the back or you'll goof up the tension of the seam. Your hands are really there for guiding the fabric. Here's my last pin. Slow down towards the end. Make sure I remember to backstitch. And then go forward again with the presser foot, and I'm done. There it is.